Gospel and Homily for the third Sunday in Lent, Year B. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Just before the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and in the temple he found people selling cattle and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting at their counters there. Making a whip out of some cord, he drove them all out of the temple, cattle and sheep as well, scattered the money changers' coins, knocked over their tables, and said to the pigeon sellers, "Take all this out of here and stop turning my Father's house into a market." Then his disciples remembered the words of Scripture, "Zeal for your house will devour me." The Jews intervened and said, "What sign can you show us to justify what you have done?" Jesus answered, "Destroy this sanctuary, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews replied, "It's taken 46 years to build this sanctuary, and you are going to raise it up in 3 days." But he was speaking of the sanctuary that was his body. And when Jesus rose from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the Scripture and the words that he had said. During his stay in Jerusalem for the Passover, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he gave. But Jesus knew them all, and he did not trust himself to them. He never needed evidence about any man. He could tell what a man had in him. The Gospel of the Lord. A man had a dream. He was wandering around in heaven when Jesus came along and let him have a vision of something happening down here on earth. It was a church on a Sunday morning, and Mass was being celebrated. The organist was playing away, but he couldn't hear a sound. He could see the congregation singing, but again, silence. He watched the priest say the prayers, but once again, there was no sound. He was puzzled, so he turned to Jesus and asked him, "Why the silence?" Jesus replied, "Well, you see, unless people are sincere in their worship, we cannot hear them up here." In the temple precinct, which was considered to be holy ground, defrauding pilgrims by dishonest currency exchanges were going on and even tolerated. Jesus was aware of all these abuses, and that is why he was livid. In a fit of righteous anger, he cleared the temple of these rogue traders. They would have been doing this for years without anyone challenging them. How could they genuinely worship God inside the temple if they were swindling people in the temple grounds? The question we could ask is there a contradiction between our worship of God on Sunday and maybe what we do on Monday? I half remember an old rhyme which went something like this. Mr. A, he went to Mass. He never missed a Sunday. But Mr. A, he went to hell for what he did on Monday. And it is often good to remind ourselves that at the Last Judgment, whether we stand on Christ's left or right side will be determined on whether we put flesh on the bones of our church going or not. In other words, that we put faith into action. The traders in the temple grounds had their hearts set on mammon, which is another word for money. The worship of God took a back seat. Even the war in the Middle East that's going on now is about money, really. Money is the root of all evil. Political leaders can be beholden to powerful financial backers who will influence their thinking, even to legitimizing an unjust war. As the wise man says, when money talks, the truth is silent. In Gaza, this political lobbying is taking precedence over the lives of little children and their mothers and fathers. Jesus put his life on the line by challenging people like that. In the Gospel today, he saw red and he set about clearing the temple precincts, much to the ire of the temple priests. After all, they were in on this scam as well. They would lose a lot of money if their corrupt but lucrative trade in the temple grounds went under. Jesus, according to them, would have to be dealt with. Hence his passion. Another way that my worship of God may be compromised is when I treat the house of God as a kind of Sunday bazaar. Isn't that what Jesus said? Stop turning my Father's house into a market. There are not many places these days free of noise or din, even in the places of worship. Prayerful people tell us that God can only be encountered in the stillness, and if we can't find it even in our churches, then our worship of God will leave a lot to be desired. So today, we ask the good Lord to clear out from our spiritual temple all those things which makes our worship of him less than genuine. Only then will there be a resonance between how we worship here on earth and how it is received in heaven. Thank you all very much for listening now, and God bless you all.